teach kids to be proud of British history? 0207 862 2222 is the number to give us a ring. A new poll carried out by think tank The Policy Exchange has found that nearly 3/4 of the population think that children should be taught to be proud of British history. Events that people take most pride in including Britain's role in the World Wars, the Magna Carta, the Industrial Revolution and the abolition of the slave trade. But do you agree, should we instill in children a sense of pride in the UK's past, or do you think that we should stop presenting children with such a rose-tinted portrayal of Britain's role in the world? James, how do you feel about this? What were you taught at school?
I was taught quite a lot of things. I think...
But in history, what sticks out to you? Because all I remember is the Second World War. I don't know anyone that was taught about the First. Just the Second World War and that's it.
We had a lot of the First, we had a lot of the Second. I think we had a lot of Industrial Revolution, various other things. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, when I look back at the history, I was given, I think, quite a rounded view in the sense that it wasn't all great. And there were times at which, whether it's the British nation or government had basically taken the wrong steer. And also when it comes to social policies, there are all sorts of things which you can look back in history and say that, well, they weren't right now. But I don't think you need to look through rose-tinted spectacles in order to come up with a view as to the positives that Britain has had, not only on this country and our legacy here, but also around the world, because I think that there is rather too much negativity in the sense that, of course, there are things that happened in the past, and it doesn't matter whether you look at, again, social policies relating to marriages and divorces and children and how children are brought up and all sorts of things. There are lots of things in the past that we did wrong. And I think that you learn from history to make sure that things either aren't repeated or indeed to make sure that we take a better view. But I think if you just trash everything, there are some incredible legacies all around the world from Britain and its exports. And I think you need to look at it in the round. So do I think that we need to say everything that Britain did was great? No. Do I think that we need to be slightly prouder of what we've done and what those achievements are, instead of wringing our hands and apologising every 5 seconds and talking about reparations when it's not necessary? Because for many of us, nothing to do with us.
But the question in this, and 3/4 of the people say that we should, is should we teach children to be proud of Britain? That's not, should we teach children about our history, the good and bad, and let them make their own decisions? So do you think there's a sort of indoctrination?
Proud of Britain today, I think yes, because I think otherwise you can, if you have a look at the newspapers, everything's terrible or worse, and there's nothing positive. But in fact, there are plenty of things to be positive about in terms of whether it's our localised culture, our internationalised culture, the integration of people from all over the world. I mean, all sorts of things, which we do brilliantly in this country.
The question, I want to answer the specific question, which is, should we teach our children to be proud of Britain in schools? I'm just trying to think practically, in which lesson are we going to do that? Okay, are we going to do it in the humanities? Are we going to do it in history, social studies? So in history, that is one of the easiest ways to get that rose-tinted vision that I think some people want. And I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but here's the thing, okay? Of the three of us, I became British. I wasn't born one. And when I became British, I had to decide how I felt about that. What does that mean for me? How do I internalise the fact that when I go out into the world now, I'm a British person? And I'm proud of being British. I am proud. And it's nothing to do with our history. It's to do with the people the people of this country and the ones that I've met. And I've been privileged enough to travel around this country and see what the rest of it is like. I think teaching kids to be proud in a history lesson sounds really jingoistic. It sounds really kind of just like forced. Pride and learning to accept Britishness or learning to celebrate Britishness isn't something I was taught at school. It's something I learned over years of studying this place, of being British, and the way that I was treated and accepted into Britain. That's something that we should be proud about, the fact that I would say that.
But I think everybody's experiences are slightly different. So say, for example, so you talk about your experience of having not been born British. I was born British, but 2 generations ago I wouldn't have been. So I think that there are so many different learned experiences, if you like, of how people either become British or are British. So I think that to understand.
Kids to be proud of it? What does that mean? Like, what do we do? Do we stand
if
over them and we're like, "Are you proud?" No, that's not proud enough. We need to send you back to remedial pride lessons.
Focus on more of the positive elements to our influence in the world than the negative.
Would you not prefer the kids that go to school to be critical thinkers, to be able to analyse information in this digital age that we live in? Would you not prefer British kids to learn digital literacy rather than this ephemeral quality of being proud of being Britain? That's not something we have to teach kids.
I suppose what I thought when I read this was we hear a lot of criticisms from the right that our children are being influenced by liberal teachers. Teachers tend to be more on the left, apparently, and so they're influencing our children that way. Isn't this also influencing our children, James? Isn't this also indoctrinating a kind of view that we want, instilling a view that maybe the teachers want the children to have? And is that what school is about? Is it not about learning the facts and thinking about them
Well,
yourself?
I don't think school is about learning facts anymore, because I think that the internet does that for us. I think critical thinking and digital skills, if you like, are way more important. But I also think it's not necessarily indoctrinating, and I would agree with you. I don't want to see that. But I do think it's about giving the tools and the information so people can make up their own minds. And I think that part of that is you don't have to apologise for everything that Britain has done in the past, because not all of it was terrible. And in the same way that I think there are some incredible inventions which have had, the things I would say are really important and allow people to feel, proud about being British are not only the incredible inventions and achievements that are around the world and the language and various other things and having a really good mastery of the language, but it's also about the things which are going on today, the ability on whether it's sports fields or arts and entertainment or films and media and entertainment and, digital access and all those things. There's plenty today that otherwise you then pot it up in aspic. And then I think it's all about, I don't know, dancing around, maypoles and
James,
going to the pub.
I agree, James, but teaching kids to be proud of Britain for the sake of it being Britain is nonsensical. It's silly. It doesn't. You can't teach someone to be proud of something because.
No, but I think having a national pride and a national identity.
Yeah, but that's different to just being like, well, you should be. I stand opposed, or I'm in the minority because this report suggests that many people disagree and that we absolutely should be.
75%.
But I still think that it's really important. Listen, I'm from Afghanistan. I'm not proud of what's happening in Afghanistan today. But Afghanistan has a 5,000-year history that I can sort of look to and be proud of.
I wonder whether that's what's missing in our classrooms, and maybe that's what this is indicating, is that not that we should be telling children that they should be proud of absolutely every element of British history, but actually when you look at it in the round, there are very many elements that show a nice general characteristic of the country, or
that's the
elements
point.
that should be proud. Because we keep losing people to Australia.
but that's the
minute
point.
they
Enough,
finish
and that's
university, they're off.
But there are points of Britishness or being proud of Britain that you've missed off that list. Number one, we celebrate diversity to the extent that we can. Number two, there are things like women's suffrage that we champion. We allow people to be rebellious. That's part of who we are. And what the show really is, to be honest. We allow discourse, we allow debate. And that is as much something to be proud of. But you can't teach that in school.
But you see, I would agree that there's no point trying to teach in the sense of being able to say, you must feel proud or you must feel this. However, there are plenty of things that people should or could learn about. For example, that those thousands of years of history and heritage and culture, in order to be able to use, analyse, interpret what is and what makes you British, what inherently gives you the things that we would wish to champion around the world in today's world. So, for example, you talk about free speech, being able to interpret that. If you go to the States, for example, they say they got free speech, they don't have it at all because they have lawyers who litigate on everything.
OK, I want to get another call in. Ted from Essex, what's your thought on this? Do we need children to be more proud of Britain? Do we need to be teaching that in school?
Well, to be honest with you, I think that the black people and white people should be taught all our histories together, because white people are not actually taught their own history here. All you are taught are Henry VIII and people like that.
It's interesting. First of all, we're made up of many more races than just black and white. But I take your point on what you're trying to get across, I think. But we all have a sort of odd view about what we remember being taught in history, because I only remember being taught about the Second World War. But of course, things come up and then I sort of remember them mentioning it in school. So we were probably taught a lot more than we think. And isn't that right? Shouldn't we be taught about lots of different aspects of our history?
we should, but as long as you're taught the real history of the country, not just about rich people and how to be proud of rich people. You should be taught about, like, Shakespeare. Apparently, we went to see a Hathaway house, and the people in the fields were cut off the crust of bread, thrown out. That's where the saying "earn a crust" come from. But they was labouring in the fields for a crust of bread.
Do you know,
So we had
it's a really interesting point you make, because they often say history is written by the victors. So you do always, I mean, what is the real version of history? You always get it's always slightly slanted, and there's always a slight bias to it. But the fact that, maybe we should.
But there is a danger here, Ted. You see, I think you make a good point that if, for example, you look at all Britain's great exports, what are they? They're either successful businesses or brands, or they're people or they're pop stars. And so they are the really rich people. And that's how we measure success to an extent.
That's not what makes our culture, which is what you were discussing earlier.
And I think that some of those things which are not to do with the rich people or the the royal families and all those sort of histories and all those sort of things, the famous people, of course the people who invented stuff. I mean, I want to know who invented the Kit Kat, for goodness sake. I mean, we don't know that name, but we know lots of people who invented lots of other things.
British? Yeah, they might be.
There might be.
Mr. Roundtree? I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows?
Thank you very much for your call. That definitely sparked a conversation I wasn't expecting. Jean from London, what's your view when it comes to teaching children to be proud of Britain?
Yes, well, I'm 83, and I was born in World War II, so I've been through every decade up to now you care to mention. So I've seen opinions about this subject come and go. I think every other country, America, kept slaves. They wave their stars and stripes everywhere they go. They put flags everywhere in the gardens. We're supposed to hide our Union Jack. We're not supposed to show it because we're supposed to be ashamed of it. I saw a young chap riding up the Northfield Avenue with one of those from Gaza, with a Gaza flag flying in the breeze. And I thought, if we did that with the Union Jack, I don't know, we'd be called, sort of racist or something.
I see. So you think there's a sort of self-instilled guilt and shame about being British. But I suppose, how are we going to have that sort of celebration of our culture and being British, but at the same time remembering all the negatives?
To start with, we should celebrate our history and our culture along with everybody else's, all right, that's already here. But don't forget that KwaZulu in Africa raided villages and brought slaves back to his village. So he was into slavery. The Barbary pirates, the pirates from Barbary, raided the Cornish coast and took white women for the harem, and that's the
slavery
fact.
is global. It still goes on today. It is not.
I know.
It's not just the one that we learned, and the predominant slavery that we learned in history. And maybe we need to learn more about that. I don't know. So we can put everything into perspective. I think nuance is something that we miss.
That's even more of a shame to the countries that still practice slavery.
Yeah.
Whether it's indentured. Making people work for nothing in their houses.
Modern slavery still happens today in this
else.
country. Jean, thank you very much for your call.